Okay, so I'm going to open part 4. Wait, first we go to that UN number so it would make sense to us, okay? From how we move from 1.2067. It's 2067, yes, 2067. Okay, so we were here 900. 900 gave us a list of substances that are prohibited for transport. So we have to check and see whether this falls under any one of those lists. And then the next one was 967, right? So 967, where are you here? 967 said that if you want to use this flexible bulk containers, the BK3s, they're only permitted in accordance to this. So when you click this, there it says flexible bulk containers are not allowed in the hold, are only allowed in the hold of general cargo ships and are not allowed to be transported in CTUs. All right. So coming back to this question again, right? So that was your answer for question number 3. Now question number 4 asks you, can the shipper use 25 kilogram waterproof paper bags, and how will the bags be marked and labeled? If the bags are unitized on a pallet, and how will that be marked? Okay, so first and foremost, can they use a 25 kilogram waterproof bag or not for this cargo?
Yes.
So what do? We go back to the UN number. Yeah. And where are we looking at?
Packing instruction.
Packing
Yeah.
instruction.
So we go to P002, right? So when we go to P002, we've got to see whether bags are allowed. You see the bags are allowed. Yeah. And this is a packing group 3, right? So 50 kilograms are allowed in this bag. Correct? Is there any PP? No packing provisions, just a straightforward P002. So when we answer again, now we go back to the question. Can they use bags? Yes, they can use bags, right? 25 kg bags. They are given up to 50 kg. So can the shipper use? Yes, the shipper. And then remember to check, because when you look at it at P002 for bags, it says 5H what?
5H3, 5H4.
Okay, so
5L3.
5H is the plastic bag. He wants to use plastic bag, isn't it? What is it? No, water, no, paper bag. So that's L, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he wants to use a paper bag which is waterproof. Can he, what is that? 5L something, right?
5L3.
5L3, yeah. Water resistant. So it's in that P002 instruction, right? P002 bags, 5L3 ada.
Yes.
There you go, boleh. So back to this, just to make sure, yes, the shipper can use 25 kg 5L3 bags. You're pro already lah, because you already know what that is, okay? And then how will these bags be marked and labeled? Okay, individual bags will be marked with UN 2067, and that, and just copy and paste this. Bummer, don't make me type the whole thing again. Horrible. Anyway, I'm taping this to tell them I don't like all this nonsense.
I think we are wrong on 5L3. It should
Why?
be 5L2 because paper bags, correct?
Yes.
Paper bags is 5M2.
M2. Okay, thank you for correcting that, Prunella. Let's see. Yes, paper is M. So pandai-pandai also tak berapa pandai. So kita tukar balik M2. Thank you, Prunella, for setting us straight. Fertilizer. All right, and then what are the labels? Labels. Class 5.1 only, kan? There's no other. None other than 5.1. Then you say when packed onto a pallet, in addition to the marks and labels indicated, also affix label over pack on the pallet. On the pallet, right? Because they palletize the cargo now. So now we got to make it an overpack. So not only are we going to re-stick the mark and the label, we're also going to stick an additional label called overpack on the pallet. Then number 5, what are the conditions when considering packaging, you're not gods, packaging these goods? So what consider, that means when you are packing these goods, what must you consider in terms the conditions? What must you consider in terms of its conditions? So which means where do you refer to? Any idea? So you go back to that SDS, okay? All right. And then you go to the section relating to handling of it. So you can get some information on that in terms on how, what any conditions indicated when we handle this cargo. There you go. So they tell you about, precautions for safe handling. Put on appropriate PPE. All right. And then see, do not eat, drink, smoke when you're doing that. So look at this portion of it and then you can indicate how you can prepare in order for packaging. So which means that you always have to look at this section when you're doing any operations concerning the said dangerous goods. All right, so in this, you can just generally put, so say I want to answer this question. So when handling these goods, use appropriate PPE and do not smoke or consume any food and drinks. All right. And then you also want to ensure, because you're packing it into, also ensure that packages are UN approved and each individual package and pallet is properly marked and labeled.
I
Right?
think the sealing of the bags is also very important.
The what?
How you seal the bags.
Yeah, it's very important. So you look at the package itself, right? Like if it's a UN approved bags, they will give you instructions on how you go about actually sealing these bags. All these UN approved packages will tell you that. And then the final thing, number 6, is an LQ question. Can the shipper use LQ provisions as the buyer or consumers? Indicate, can they use LQ?
Yes.
Yes, because people buy fertilizer, right? Yes.
5 5
Yeah.
kilo bags.
As long as they use combination packaging and the inner package does not contain more than 5 liters, and when packed in an outer package,
I think not more than 5 kilos.
it does not exceed 30 kgs. Yeah, it's a P002, 5 kgs. So there you go. That's how you answer this really long question. And this really long question, I think, has got there 20 marks. See that? Big, huge number of marks. And there you go. That's done. Finish. Habis. Okay. So today is the part 7 lah, the part that has all the information that we need with regards to understanding conditions of compatibilities of substances, and as well as what are considered by carriers when the principal planners are planning the stowage of these consignments of dangerous goods. Okay, so we will be focusing on functions specific to loading and unloading dangerous goods into cargo transport units. And of course, it'll cover all this because when we look at the code book and we take a look at that portion where they tell us about what is needed in the training, right? We can see that even for those who are doing loading and unloading dangerous goods into cargo transport units, all this information has to be covered: documentation, classes, marking, labeling, placarding, stowage requirements where applicable, segregation, cargo securing as contained in the CTU code, which means that we will also be covering the CTU code, then the ERP, first aid, CSC, and safe handling procedures. All right, so we begin with, let me first open up, I'm going to stop share for a bit and let me open up my part 6. Oh, sorry, part 7. There you go. So when we look at part 7 is referring us to the columns 16A and 16B of the IMDG code. All right, and 16A and 16B generally where we would look at, for instance, 16A would be looked at when the planners of the vessel are planning the stowage of the vessel. All right, so we first start with the simple stuff like looking at certain definitions. So actually, I'm going to do a new share of the code. And I'm going to go to this first part of it just so you understand certain things here. So when we come to this, of course, in the first part, they talk to you about the kinds of ships. So when they are referring to segregation stowage in this part of the IMDG code, the ships that they are referring to are, of course, container ships, ro-ro ships, general cargo ships, barges, and also when they refer to stowage categories also include passenger vessels also. All right. So there are some definitions in here that I think we need to go through lah, just so we understand certain things. Okay, because whenever we do whenever we look at this part of the code book, we will come upon certain things or certain terminologies like clear of living quarters. So anything that comes with this handling, it actually is part of a handling or stowage code that says clear of living quarters. Whenever clear of living quarters means, it means that that unit, that cargo transport unit, right, has to be stored at least 3 meters away from where the crew stays, the accommodation of the crew, where there are any air intakes on board the ship, where there are machinery spaces on board the ship, and other enclosed work areas on board the vessel. So whenever you see this clear of living quarters, the distance is 3 meters, and the 3-meter distance includes all this. All right. Then they say whenever they refer to CTU, they will either say closed CTU or just CTU. If it's a closed CTU, we're talking about either a container, a closed container, right? Or portable tank, of course, it's closed. And also we're looking at like box trucks in terms of vehicles. But here they are referring to in this definition is a closed CTU for class 1. So this one, they're saying this unit means, okay, a unit which is fully enclosed, encloses the contents by permanent structures. Our normal container can be secured to the ship structure and is, except for division 1.4, structurally serviceable as defined in this section. So this is the kind, this is pretty much what they are referring to when they state the special types of containers that are needed for class 1. And then here, I want you to look at, yeah, there, potential sources of ignition. So potential sources of ignition means, but it is, they say, but is not limited to open fires, machinery, exhaust, galley uptakes, electrical outlets, equipment including those on refrigerated or heated cargo transport units, unless they are certified safe type. So there are certain substances like our class 3 or even the class 4.2 or 4.1 where you may have to keep it away from potential sources of ignition. And same goes with this protected sources of heat. So protected sources, protected from sources of heat, this means that the CTUs have to be stored at least 2.4 meters from any heated ship structures, where the surface temperature is liable to exceed 55 degrees Celsius. So they've given you examples of these areas, the heated structures at steam pipes, heating coil, top or side walls. So this is all referring to the vessel in terms of stowage. So when we talk about stowage, because the first 16.A is stowage, it starts with also explaining to you what is defined, because people tend to take stowage and storage as the same thing. Stowage is a bit different because stowage takes into account not just placing a cargo into, because when you store, you can store a truck, you can store a train, you can store a plane, and you can store a ship. All right. So whenever we store with regard to weight distribution. We store with regard to the next drop point, right? Because like say trucks or planes or ships, they are not going from one port to another. I mean, they're not going from port A to port B only. They're going to multiple ports. So when these ships, the trucks or trains or planes store, they will be looking at also those principles, right? So stowage mean the proper placement of DG, because we're learning IMDG. So they say the proper placement on DG on board of a ship in order to ensure its safety and environmental protection during the transit, during transport. And whenever stowage is referred to either on deck, that means on top, when ships that have decks, or under deck, all right? And here they are referring to what it means when they say that for class 1, you need a structurally serviceable unit. So that means a CTU that has no major defects in its structural components, and they give you the information about what they mean when they say structurally serviceable. So these are some of the definitions that I wanted you to just go through. And now I go back to our presentation. All right, so we've covered all these definitions, and now we go straight to the stowage categories. So the categories for stowage, just to remind you again, because you've done this in GA already, for class 1, the 5 categories are expressed in numbers. And what they're generally doing is indicating whether that consignment can be stored on deck or under deck. And they've given examples of course, cargo ships, but also they've included passenger ships as well. Also in for class 2 to 9, the category is same 5 categories, but they're expressed in alphabets. And they too are indicating the similar thing, the types of ships that they're accepted on, and whether they're accepted on deck and under deck. So there are also certain special stowage provisions in 7.1.4 where they talk about where do you store certain types of cases that occur. Like for instance, when you have empty, unclean packages or IBCs or LPs, they are empty, but they are not clean. So they still have the residue. And in fact, the PSN, I mean, your declaration, when you declare the substance, you would also include the word empty, unclean, and indicate the last UN that was packed in there or filled in there. So it says that these kind of units, they shall be stored on deck only or under deck in a mechanically ventilated cargo space. Empty, unclean pressure receptacles which carry class 2.3 label, they can only be stored on deck because they still have residue of toxic gases on them, in them. If you put them under deck and they escape, then you'll poison the crew. Waste aerosols shall be stored in accordance to 60A. So they ask you to go back to 16A and go look up for waste aerosols and where they should be stored. As for marine pollutant, they state here where storage is permitted for deck or under deck, you should choose under deck because marine pollutants, you want to keep them safe from the potential of dropping into the sea during rough voyage. So when storage on deck is required, preference shall be given to storage on protected decks or to storage inboard in sheltered areas of exposed decks. So you must protect these, like for instance, bars are applied in order to keep it secure on board if it is on deck. And then here they talk about storage of class 1 dangerous goods and the types of ships. So here cargo ships of 500 gross tons or over that are constructed before the 1st of September 84 and in cargo ships of less than 500 gross tons, and they give you a date. They say goods of class 1 except 1.4S shall be stored on deck only. And then for goods of class 1 except 1.4 shall be stored not less than a horizontal distance of 12 meters from living quarters, life-saving appliances, and areas with public access. Same thing for class 1 except 1.4. This is the no significant hazard. Shall not be positioned closer to the ship's side than a distance equal to 1/8 of the beam or 2.4 meters, whichever is lesser. Goods of class 1 shall not be stored within a horizontal distance of 6 meters from potential sources of ignition. So the storage for other classes, they give you the storage categories for class 1, but in addition to that, they also indicate to you special conditions pertaining to storage provisions for class 1. And this is for the transport to and from offshore oil platforms, mobile offshore drilling units, and other offshore installations. So this is actually an update that came in under 3918 under 7.1.4. So I'm opening that up too. I'm going to open the soft copy as well. All right. Yes, because this whole part has been updated. So let me show this whole part to you. Right here, this portion. So transport to and from offshore oil platforms, mobile offshore drilling units, and other offshore installation. It stays here, notwithstanding the storage category indicated in 16A for UN 0124, jet perforating guns charged, and this 0494. transported to or from oil platforms, offshore oil platforms, mobile offshore drilling units, and other offshore installations may be stored on deck in offshore well tool pallets, cradles, or baskets, provided that, they indicate here, initiation devices shall be segregated from each other and from any jet perforating guns in accordance to the provisions of 727. 727 gives you the segregation of class 1 based on their compatibility groups. Okay, and also from any dangerous goods in accordance to provision 724, and 724 is our segregation, and 7632. 7632 is referring to segregation of packages containing DG that are stored the conventional way. All right, this is on general cargo ships. And so this whole thing tells you jet perforating gun shall be securely held in place during transport, that each shape charge affixed to any gun shall not contain more than 112 grams of explosives, that both ends of the jet perforating. So if you fulfill this condition, then this can be stored on deck other than what it says, because if you look at 0124, the UN number 0124, 0124. It says category 03. So category 03 also asks you to put it, it gives you the option to put it on deck or under deck. So they said you can put it under deck, it's subject to these conditions. Yeah. And then from there, we move to stowage of stabilized dangerous goods, because apart from that, from the point where you look at the transport of offshore oil platforms, then you have stowage on passenger ships, stowage of class 7, and what would be important is this, because this is also something new, stowage of stabilized dangerous goods. This is substance for which the word stabilize has been added as part of the PSN of the substance. Stowage category D and SW1 will apply. So stowage category D is actually on deck only, and they said SW1. So SW1 means, and now we will come to the SW, protected from sources of heat. So these were the definitions that you saw just now: protected from sources of heat, clear of living quarters, and you'll also see protected from sources of ignition here. All right, so all these stowage codes are additional information that is applied when planning stowage of dangerous goods onto vessels, as well as you have handling codes, and handling codes come in for class 4, generally dangerous goods. Now we come to the exciting part, which is our segregation. Okay, so when what we are concerned with is segregation in the container. That is our concern, because we want to know, when we put more than one type of dangerous goods, are these dangerous goods compatible with each other or not? And in order to determine that, what we need to do is we have to take a look at the segregation table. Okay, the segregation table. The segregation table guides us in terms of how do we go about identifying whether corresponding UN numbers of separate packages are compatible with each other or not. So I'm going to take this time now to start running how to do segregation. Okay, so all of you have you can either download the segregation table, all right? If you have the book, then you can look at your segregation table in the book. And because I'm going to move it out of the screen, and I'm going to select a couple of UN numbers, and from there we will apply the segregation codes and look at various other aspects. Now, just to remind you, when we are doing segregation, we also have to refer to volume 2, part 3. Do we not? I just want to check. Do we not? My friendos, my dear friends, earth calling friends, where are they?
Yes, we need,
Yes.
we need.
Yeah, so why do we need this though?
Because there are section 16, special
16B.
provision.
The, sorry?
You have to
The
refer to
column
section 16B.
16B, yeah, fine. So that's looking at the DGL, that's true. But there's also another need that comes in the beginning of part 3 that we have to refer to in this volume 2. Because when we go to 16B, 16B will guide us to go somewhere else.
Provision.
No provision. Okay, so here, let me show you again. Where is the code book? Yes, I'm already showing you the code book, right? Wait, just a sec. Right, are you looking at the code right now on your screens? Yes, you are. So you look at part 3, yeah? I'm going to open part 3. This is where you look at all the time, the DGL, right? And then I'm just going to randomly take a UN number, 2051. Now in this 2051, okay, I'm just going to start this so I can show you how this process works. I'm going to move. Oh, the board. That's this terrible. So 201 is a class what?
2051 6.1.
6.1. And any sub-risk there?
20, oh, so, sorry.
2051 is class
2051, sorry, I looked at the wrong one.
A. Sub-risk
Okay, no
is A.
problem. So
class A.
whenever I do segregation, and I think some of you have seen when you have come for GA with me also, I tell you all to draw a simple table. So a case can be anything, okay? So let me, for example, give you a case, okay? So assuming you are a freight consolidator, all right? That means you run a console warehouse where you collect multiple cargoes and you ship it out. But you are also a DG freight consolidator. That means you actually are an expert to identify. So you get these like 3 shippers, and these 3 shippers are from different destination, different origin parts in Malaysia, because this is Malaysia, so I'm going to give you Malaysia examples. One shipper is in Shah Alam, and this shipper in Shah Alam produces this 20, what did I give you just now? 2051, right? 2051, which is this dimethyl ammonia tenol or whatever, right? And this guy wants to ship out 2051. He wants to ship out about 20 steel drums. Okay, and it's about 200 liters per drum, right? And actually not 20 steel drums. I'm going to change it because LCL, 5 steel drums. And then you have another shipper, and this shipper is shipping out this product, which is UN 18. 1848 lah, our favorite 1848. Okay, UN 1848. Propionic acid. So this propionic is in Kuantan. And this guy has got,
Cannot
yeah?
see what you are writing.
Okay, but you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Kuantan. Okay. Push the board a bit back. Okay. So Kuantan got 1848, another shipper in Kuantan with 1848. And this guy has got 3 drums by 180 liters. And so one coming from Shalam, one coming from Kuantan, another one coming from Telok Gong. And in Telok Gong, this guy is bringing UN 2163 PG3. And this guy has got about 15 jerry cans, plastic jerry cans that contain about 25 liters. About 25 liters, and this is pelletized. Now all of this cargo is going to the same destination. They come from different origins, but they are all going to Sydney in Australia. So you now, as a box operator, CFS, you want to see now whether you can actually pack all of this together in one container. So in order to answer this, I like to do this. You draw a table. Okay, the first table will give you the UN number. The second table will give you the main has. The third table will give you the sub has. And the fourth column will give you the 16B information. So what you want to do is you want to collect all these UN numbers, 2051, 1848, and 2163. This is PG3. So we open one by one. I'll take what I have open here is 1848. So 1848, I see, just put a line here so we know which is what. 1848 got main has, sub has, tada, right? And when I look at column 16B, I die man so much. SGG1, SGG1, SG36, SG49. And now I go to 2051 because I need to get that same information out too. So I go to 2051. And 2051 is a 8, a 3, and then again I go to 16B and I see whether got anything or not. There's SG35 there. SG35. And now I have to go to 2163. Oh, don't have, sorry, not 2163, 1263, terbalik. 1263, terbalik, there's no 2163. There, paint. Right, so 1263 is actually just a class 3 and there is nothing there. Class 3, nothing there, nothing here. So now when I use first the segregation table, I have to do this one and this one, right? This one and this one, this and this, this and this. Then I have to do this and this because I have to know whether these are compatible, right? Because this and this I'm doing, this and this I'm doing, Then I have to do this and this. Then I will know whether I can pack them all together or I can only pack a few of them together out of these three. So what I do is I go to the segregation table. And when I go to the segregation table, to be honest with you, I'm going to get a lot of X's. Okay. There you go. So 8 and 3, what do you get? Let's take this one. 8 and 8, you will get what? 8 and 8.
8 and
8
8.
and 8.
Definitely
Cannot.
you will get an. Yeah, but when you put it on your segregation table, what do you get? 8 and 8.
X.
You get an X. Yeah, so you first do that. You do this and this, you get an X. You do 3 and 8, what do you get?
X.
You're going to get an X. All right, so same thing, if you do an 8 and 3 here, for this guy, you will get an X. Or whether a 3 and 8, you will get an X. Generally, 8 and 3, 8 and 3, you will get X. Correct? So which means that now I have to look at 16B, because ideally when I get X and if there is nothing here, nothing at all, empty totally, then it means that it's compatible with each other. But wait, I have to see what these things are telling me first. So the first thing is SG35. SGs are your segregation codes. So you go to SG35. Okay, and what is SG35 saying? Separated from
Acid.
SGG1, correct?
Yeah.
Right? And when you go to this UN number, 1848, you also see SGG1 here. Okay? And then you see, so let's collect what these SGs are telling us first, so then we can work on this. So what is SG36? So this is separated from SGG18, and SG49 is telling you separated from SGG6. Okay, number one, every value explains something, right? Value 1 means away from. Away from means how far? How far is away from?
3 meter.
Huh? Sorry?
Away from is
3 meter.
3 meter, exactly. And then separated from is what?
6 meter.
And the
6
number
meter.
3?
5 meter.
12 meter.
12.
And number 4?
Number 4 is
24
longitude.
meter.
Yeah, so it's double,
Meaning-
double, double. Okay, remember that. Number 1 is 3 meter. Double of 3 is 6. Number 2 is 6 meter. Double of 6 is 12. Number 3 is 12 meters. Number 4 is 24 meters. All right, so when actually what I want to draw to your attention is what this means and this means. Okay, so when you see here, you get an SGG here, and in here you get an SG35. Why did they just put SGG1? Why did they put SG35 instead of SGG1? Because actually SG35, they're asking you to look at SGG1, right? Why did they use SG? Why didn't they just go straight away and say SGG1? Let's see if you can answer this. Any idea? Or if you don't know, I explain.
No idea.
No idea. Okay.
No idea.
When you see the SGG indicated in 16B, and it so happens that your item falls under that SGG, then the distance that you have to maintain is 3 meters. Okay. But if you see SG35, and when you read SG35, it says separated from. So separated from means a 6 meter distance if, for instance, this or this happens to be in the list of acids. Correct? So first things first. First thing we want to look at is SGG1. So which means we now, this is where I say you need to go to part 3, volume 2, not just for the DGL, but also to see the segregation groups, the SGGs, because the SGGs are indicated here, 3.1.4. Okay, so now this is SGG1. This one is saying that this product cannot be kept with any acids. That if you keep it next to acids, you have to maintain a 6-meter distance. So which means we need to determine whether this is an acid and whether this is an acid. All right, so we're going to look in this SGG, whether there's any 1848. There is, see this, 1848, can you see it? Okay,
Yes.
so we know this one cannot be kept with this one already because it's already there. But let's look at 1263. Is there any 1263? 1263. Don't have, right? Right or not? Tadakan. This is not in SGG1. So as far as this one and this one is concerned, we know that UN 2051, UN 2051 and UN 1263 is compatible. You can pack them together. But then UN 2051 and 1848 are not. They need to keep a 6-meter distance from each other. All right. But what about 1848 and 1263? Because 1848 gives us an SGG1, which is the same thing separated from acid. So we need to know whether 1263 is an acid, and we already determined it is not. Right? Then we say separated from alkalines and separated from cyanides. So which means, let's go to cyanides first. We want to see whether 1263 is a cyanide, and it isn't. Trust me, it's a paint. So you won't see 1263 here. All right. And then because this is SG49. And then you look at SG36 that's telling you SGG separated from alkaline, 6 meters distance from that. And then you go there and then you look whether you have 1263, you don't have it either. So to answer this question, these two are incompatible. Whereas 1263 can either be kept with 2051 or it can be kept with 1848. But these two guys cannot be kept with each other. Do you understand?
Yes.
What about the rest of you?
Yes.
Yes, huh? All right.
Reshma,
Hmm?
I just want to say the current the IMDG code that I have for 3816, the segregation table, right?
Yeah, it's
Didn't
different.
indicate
Yeah, it's
it's
different.
different.
It's different. It's different.
It didn't indicate the segregation
Group.
on the group.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest changes that took place. So in the old version, they don't give you the SGG. They will tell you separated from acids, separated. They don't even give you the segregation group numbers. They just say separated from cyanides, separated from this one, like that, or away from. That's how they say it in the old book. That's why it's been updated now, and it's a lot more user friendly. All right, so let's just now, okay, we're still here. So that was like very simplistic manner that I did in terms of segregation, right? We looked at, I need to show you certain things. Let's look at the definition, and I want to show you this. The following segregation terms are used throughout this code and are defined in chapters of this part, allowing for packing CTUs and onboard ships. You have away from, separated by a complete compartment, or separated longitudinally. Segregation terms such as away from class that are used in the DGL. Class is deemed to include all substances within that class, or all substances which have a subsidiary hazard label of that class. Because sometimes you will get the segregation codes, the segregation codes, when you go the SGs, one of the SGs will tell you something like that. Segregate away from S4 class, separated, like if you look at SG25, SG25 will say separated from goods of class 2.1 and 2.3. So what this is saying is whenever they say segregated from a specific class, you have to look that that class doesn't appear not just main but subsidiary. And when we do segregation, we have to look at the subsidiary hazards. You cannot keep them away, meaning you cannot just focus on main hazards to do your segregation. All right. And
So you have to look at main hazard and subsidiary hazard.
subsidiary hazard.
Got to be looked into lah.
Both must be looked into. So if you use the example I gave you, like, you know, this table, it's like a very organized manner in doing your identifying whether they need to be segregated or can they be kept together. It's a simple way of doing it.
Madam Ashma, I have a question.
Okay.
I refer to these segregations. We got 1263 is compatible with 2051 or 1848, right? And then in between 2051 and 1848, it had to be keep 6 meters away.
Yeah, so they are not compatible.
So
they cannot
what
be
if
back in the container. You cannot pack them in
what
the
about
container.
40-foot container? I mean,
No, you cannot. You can. You see, whenever you get a value above X, and say X, you get an X, and then in 16B, none of the 16B is relevant, meaning that none of them tell you otherwise. That means it's back to X, which means it's compatible. That is the only time you can pack it into a CTU. But when you get a value 1 onwards, although you see it's a 3 meter distance, right? You would say it's only 3 meters, what? I can maintain 3 meters in my container. But then what are you packing it with? A corresponding dangerous goods that has asked you to keep it 3 meters away. So in that 3 meters away, when you look at the consigning provisions in a CTU, the code will tell you that dangerous goods must be closer to the door. So how are you going to organize bringing these two consignments, maintaining the 3 meter distance and making sure that they are closer to the door, right? And then second thing, you are taking 3 meters in your head as a distance. You are not looking at how much space your cargo is going to take. Because in that 20 foot or the 40 foot, your cargo itself would have taken a certain amount of the space in there. And then after that only you calculate the 3 meters. So the code says you can only use value 1 to pack into the container if you get CA approval. That's the only time. Otherwise you cannot. All right, it has to be a full X. Yeah. So here in 723, to determine segregation requirements between 2 or more dangerous goods, what we did was we applied this table, the segregation table, right? And then we saw what the cross values gave us. And then we saw that whenever the cross value was X, we went to 16B to find out what exactly is 16B, telling us whether the cargo is among a list of substances that it is incompatible with or whether it is not. Then in 7232, when a segregation term applies, the goods are not permitted to be packed in the same outer packaging. So because sometimes I get these questions. Somebody called me up that day and then asked me, they just randomly gave me 3 UN numbers just like that. And then asked me, can we pack this together in overpack or an outer package? So the segregation principles are right from then on. You check first, use the 3 UN numbers and see whether they can be kept together or not. Then only you can determine whether they can be packed together in the same outer packaging. And again, when the segregation term applies, it says it is not permitted to be transported in the same CTU except as provided in 726 and 734. So let's look at 726. So 726 is this very arguable thing, because this one you have to support your argument with a technical sheet to indicate that although the cargo indicates that they cannot be packed together, that means they need to be segregated. However, they can be kept together because of these conditions. So it says here, notwithstanding 7233 and 7234. So 7233 is this one. When provisions of this code indicate a single secondary hazard and one subsidiary, that means one subsidiary hazard label, the segregation provisions applicable to that hazard shall take precedence where they are more stringent than those of the primary. So the code also says, when, say for instance, you have these two, like for example, one is a 4.3, say 8, and then you have a 3 here, and I'm just saying, okay, it's not a possibility that this will happen, so I'm just making you imagine. All right, so this thing is actually a 8, and don't ask how loud could it be a 4.2. It doesn't make sense. No, okay, it's a 6.1 as a main hazard, and the subsidiary hazard is a 4.3. Okay, and the second corresponding product UN is just a class 3, right? So when you do an 8 and 3, you will get X. And then assuming the 16B tells you that everything is okay with that 8 and 3. But remember, you will take a 4.3 and a 3 and you will see. And a 4.3 and 3, if I am not mistaken, will tell you to maintain the distance. So the code says that even if the hazard comes out in the subsidiary hazard column, no, actually it comes out, yeah, it comes with the distance too, right? So the code says it doesn't matter if the subsidiary hazard, what you have to look at is what is the most stringent. That means which is the most stringent distance you have to apply in segregation. So if the subsidiary class gives you a higher segregation distance, you follow that one. That's what this is telling you. The segregation provisions of substance, materials or articles having more than 2 hazards, okay, that are given in more than 2 hazards, 2 or more subsidiary hazard labels are given in column 16B of the DGL. In the DGL, for bromine chloride, class 2.3, which is a 2901, has a subsidiary hazard of 5.1 and 8. The following particular segregation is specified. So they will tell you, like for instance, because of 5.1 and 8, see 8 and 5.1. Let's look at our segregation table to see that. Okay, what do you get with an 8 and a 5.1?
2. You get a 2.
You get a 2. All right, so they say that you can do this because within their subclass already, you can see that these are two conflicting classes, but they form part of the substance, right? Because they have given you the subsidiary hazards of 5.1 and 8. So for this, when this situation occurs, then you will look at SG6, which is segregation as of, if you get an SG6, then you will follow segregation as of class 5.1, or if you get an SG19, then separated from class 7, but I don't know why, stow separated from. So it says that this is how you would apply. You would apply it based on each subsidiary hazard that you have, and you look at what is the most stringent. All right, and then here, back to this, because once we finish 7, 2, 3, 4, okay, we came to this 7.2.6, right, where it was telling us about how do we establish, wait, where were we? I'm gonna move so far. We were here, we indicated about the outer packaging, and then we went to 726 and 734. So 726 was saying that Notwithstanding this and this, which we covered, substances of the same class may be stored together without regard to segregation required by the secondary subsidiary hazard, provided that the substances do not react dangerously with each other. So if the subsidiary hazard was a 4.3 and we put that with a 8, and then we saw that there was a distance of 2, so which means that you have to maintain 6-meter distance. The code says that you don't need to segregate them as long as these conditions are met. That means that these substances do not react dangerously means what? That they don't combust or evolve into considerable heat, that they don't evolve or there's no evolution of flammable, toxic or asphyxiant gases. There are no formation of corrosive substances, or there are no formation of unstable substances. So which means the code says that you can keep them as long as these conditions are met, right? So how do you provide these conditions? You have to prove it with a tech sheet. So this is where, when we go to this, it says, because here they are saying you have to segregate unless this, or you have to segregate unless this. So what is unless this? This one is here, 734. Segregation provisions within a transport unit. Dangerous goods which have to be segregated from each other, okay, according to the provisions in 7.2 shall not be transported in the same CTU, with the exception of dangerous goods which shall be segregated away from. So there is an exception given from each other, which may be transported in the same CTU, but you must get competent authority approval. So if you get a value 1, which is away from, they say with the exception of that, you can pack it in if you want, but you must get competent authority approval in order to do that. So that was what this was illustrating, okay? Where the provisions of the code indicate that a single secondary hazard, the segregation provisions applicable to that hazard shall take precedence. I explained that to you as well, all right? And now we go to 7.2.4. We took a look at the, let me see, did I cover any provisions? I covered all these provisions. And then the table, and from the table we looked at the segregation groups, the 18 groups, and the 18 groups are in 3.1.4, right, at this part of the code book, where it will list out the UN numbers that fall under these 18 group types. And then let's look at this special segregation provisions and exemption, 7.2.6. So let's look at the whole thing in entirety, because what we saw was only this one, where this one said that if the subsidiary hazards label, if the subsidiary hazard is actually asking you to segregate, you don't need to segregate as long as the substances do not react and cause this, create this, any one of these. 7262 says where the DGL specifies that segregation as of class applies, the segregation applicable to that class in 724 shall be applied. However, for the purposes of interpreting this one, 7261, which permits substances of the same class to be stored together provided they do not react dangerously with each other, the segregation provisions of the class as presented by the primary hazard in the DGL shall be applied. All right, so for example, 29655 boron trifluoride is a 4.3. The DGL entry specifies SG5 as for class 3, SG8 stow away from 4.1, and SG13 stow away from class 8. For the purpose of establishing the segregation provisions applicable in the segregation table, the class 3 column shall be consulted. The substances can be stored together with other class 4.3 substances where they do not react dangerously. So what they're trying to say is you can keep them together, because if you look at a 4.3, and you look at a 3, you're going to get a value 2. Am I right? And when you get a value 2, you can still keep them together as long as this is not going to happen to the cargo. Also here, they talk about certain classes, like when you look at 5.1 and 8, what do you get the value? You get a 2, value 2, am I right? So they say that there are certain of these classes, though they have to be segregated with each other, no segregation is applied to them. And then they have indicated this by listing out UN numbers to you. So it says no segregation needs to be applied between dangerous goods of different classes which comprise of the same substance. So because there are certain substances, because of certain levels of its mixture, they may fall under different classes, but they're technically the same substance. Okay, what changes or what varies them is the water content. This is such as sodium sulfide of 4.2, because you can get a sodium sulfide of 4.2 and you can also get a sodium sulfide in a class 8. The difference between them is the quantity of water that is in them. That's where they fall between the different classes. Or number 2, between dangerous goods which belong to a group of substances of different classes, but for which scientific evidence exists that they do not react dangerously when in contact with each other. Substances within the same table, that means 7263, which is this in 72631, 72632, or 72633 are compatible with each other. All right, so again, substances within the same table, within the same table are compatible with each other. All right, not table against table, within the same table. So these are special segregation provisions. And then here, notwithstanding 72632 6324. 7263, wait, 72632. This one. Notwithstanding this, I'm just going to click this, makes life easier. Notwithstanding this, between dangerous goods that belong to a group of substances of different classes, where evidence shows that they do not react dangerously with each other. I'm having a bad cough. Hold on, yeah. Can we take a short break, please? Yeah, what time is it? I need to drink some water. I'm getting very dehydrated. Can we come back here at 11 o'clock and continue this? Is that okay?
X.
You get an X, right? So when you get an X and say both the column 18 tells you, 16B tells you nothing, right? It's empty. You also have to be wary about one thing, because 8 can be either an acid or can be an alkaline, right? And class 3 are these flammable liquids. When the flammable liquid's flash point is very, very low, it's best not to keep it next to strong acids or alkalines, because they heat up. These acids and alkalines, they produce heat. That heat can react with the class 9 and cause a fire, a class 3 and cause a fire. All right, so despite that, but we're hoping that the segregation table, segregation column 16B will cover that portion up, but there are still some instances when that takes place. Okay, and we ended here where we were saying that these substances that despite the segregation says that they have to be separated from each other, they can be kept with each other as long as they don't cause this, right? That was where we stopped. And then we looked at these things where we saw, because this actually 72633, I believe, is a a new addition into the code. Let me just check. 7 to...
Small question.
Yes, please.
Okay, the shipper has to make sure that all this segregation is in place, is it?
If the shipper is signing the CPC. So who is the party that, you see my cough became infectious, sir? You guys also kena in the virtual space, you all also coughing now. Ayyo. Okay.
I see the person who signs my CPC, he puts a placard on the container and he goes away. I don't think he goes to the shipping line and checks.
No, you don't need to go shipping line, yaar. You mean to say the one that is the stowage planning on the kapal you don't have CPC? Do you are only, tell me Nanmuli, do you have more than one type of DG in your container or not?
One only.
Then one only, no need lah to check compatibility. If it's only one UN number, it's only when you have two different UN numbers. You want to pack two.
One question. Normally we have this when people try, it's small drums and stuff like that. The small 25-liter drums or the 5-liter drum of paints. Then they have this thinner thing, but you look at the paints and it's been here for like a few months or it's been exposed and stuff like that. Then they come with 1 drum of thinner. They say, we only got 1 drum of thinner. Can I put this in? So you have an 8 and a 3 together. So normally we'll just say, hey, that one drum, don't put it in, can or not, We always advise not to put it in. Then you always have this argument lah.
Yeah, because you see the code will tell you that the 8 and 3, when you look at the segregation table, the 8 and 3 you get an X. That just before you came in, I told everyone to be wary about 8 and 3. Now 8 and 3, when you look at segregation table, they will tell you S. But you must remember that a low flash point class 3 and a strong acid or alkaline of class 8 has a potential of actually starting a fire itself, because a class 8 heats up, like these acids are generally very hot. And when they are very, very hot, the heat that they produce would react with a very low flash point class 3. But let's take a look, like for instance, if you look at paint, paint is 1263, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it had nothing, we saw that. And if we take a look at thinner, it's probably what, turpentine or what? What is it actually, the thinner? Turpentine, right? So wait, let me look at turpentine. Turpentine. Where are you, Mr. Turpentine? Go down some more. Wait, now all of our faces are blocking my screen.
1299.
There you go, 1299. So we go to 1299, and even in 1299, 16B doesn't show anything. So because although you see they've given you sort of like a flash point of 35 degrees Celsius, but this is turpentine is class 3 though, and in your paint is also class 3. So there should be no issues unless you're talking about a class 8.
Right, Reshma, I have an example here. For my company, I ship class 3 and class 8. Class 3 is the UN 1866. And I have, 1866, and class 8 I have 2735.
2735. So let's take a look at yours, okay? 1866 and 1866 is a class 3. It's what, PG, yeah? PG3, is it?
PG3, yes.
Okay. 1866 PG3. Anything in 16B, nothing. Okay. And then 2735, right?
Yes.
And your 2735 is which PG?
I have both 2 and 3 as well.
Okay, let's take a 2. We see SGG 18, SG 35, as, because it's at 8 here, SGG 30, 18, and SG 35. If we look at PG2, let's see if PG3 has anything different or not. 2735. Same thing. All right. So of course, when we do the segregation table, we're going to get an X for these two. But now we have to see whether SGG 18, which is alkalines, whether 1866 falls under the list of alkalines, right? So we go here. There's no 1866. You see that? Don't have. So we go to SG35. SG35 is actually separated from SGG1, correct? So we go to SGG1 and we look for 1866. Don't have. So
But
looking,
it says again, if you okay, it's away from acids. Yeah.
yeah. So in both instances, whether it's SGG18 or whether it is SG35, it seems as though looking at this, these two are not going to react with each other. Both these substances will not react with. Can I ask you though, your class 3, what is the flash point? It's PG3, so the flash point would be about in the range of 40, 50 degrees?
It's more than, I think more than 60 degrees Celsius.
Ah, okay. Then it's a very high flash point, so it's relatively safe, right? And the only thing the 2735 is concerned with is, I suppose your 2735, let's see, 2735, 2727, 2735 is not in an acid list. And then I'm going to go all the way down.
It's alkaline, I guess.
Yes, it's an alkaline. Yeah, it's a corrosive alkaline. So there you go. So which means to say that actually these two can be kept together, right?
Thanks.
The only instance will either the 16B will tell you not to, depending on what is indicated in that. And that also you have to make a decision looking at your packing groups. If your class 3 is a PG1 or a PG2 and your class 8 is a PG1 or a PG2, advisable not to keep them together. All right. Any other questions? All right, so we continue, yeah?
Yeah. We were back on the packing. We are back on packing, correct?
Yeah,
Now,
we are actually in 7263. Yeah.
Yeah. The cooking gas cylinders and cars, when you're doing personal effects.
How do you handle that, right? Let's look at cylinders,
Yes.
gas cylinders first. What is the UN that they're using for the cylinders? Do you have
That's
any
the
idea?
problem. They don't have a UN.
That's
I mean,
fine.
there is a UN, but you know when you're doing
It's for
personal
the gas.
effects,
It's for the gas.
the LPG gas.
Yeah, so it goes under the gas itself, right? Let's just go under the gas first. Liquid petroleum gas.
LPG.
Liquefied gas.
LPG 1075.
1075. Okay. Okay, so 1075 and let's go to 1075. And this is empty, or got some gas inside?
There will be residual because you cannot empty anyway.
Yeah, let's look. So when we look at this gun, the P200, remember when we saw P200, gave us the types of packaging and their quantity. So we have nothing to look there. We look at 16B, we see nothing. And we want to know whether we can put a gas cylinder together with a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see anything that tells you you cannot, Prunella. Let's see
Okay.
whether 3, because we saw nothing. That was what class? A 2.1. When you do a 2.1
2.1.
with a 9, you will see an X, right?
Yep.
So, and then when we'll go to 3166 or so, you see tak ada apa benda dalam 16B.
So we can actually put it
You
in,
can
but
put
just
it
tell them
together. You can put it
together.
together. You just have to indicate both the symbols. And that also the 3166. Are you doing 962 or 961?
Okay.
Which one are you using? 961 or 962?
Let me see.
If I think you're using 962, right? So 962, you'll have your 9 label, and then you'll have your 2.1 label. So, can lah. There is boleh dipackkan. Nampaknya.
Yeah. So what you do is just put it at a distance, so that nothing happens.
Yeah, just to be safe, and then secure it lah. Because that fella
Yeah.
moves around, that's the problem. And make sure that the cap is closed lah. Because a lot of time these cylinders, the plastic caps are missing.
Yeah.
So just for safety purposes, we do all those things. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so back to, I know it's a draggy bit that we have to see the 7, but we have to see the 7, okay? We have to see, for instance, on these exemption, there are special provisions and exemptions. So this is an exemption kind, right? This is an exemption. This is an exemption. And then this is another exemption. They say that no segregation is needed between these. Now this third one is a new entry. 72633 is new. It is not, it came in with the version 3918. So they say, they say no segregation is applied between dangerous goods of different classes, which comprise of the same substance, but the differing is the water content. And then the second one, they tell you where you can prove with some scientific evidence that it's not going to react with each other. And they tell you to refer to these conditions to indicate that they don't react with each other. Then the third new one that they came in, they say that the substances within the same table of 72634. So 72634 is this table here. Yeah. So they say those that are within this table, no need to be segregated, except you must take again due regard to these, that it should not form into any one of this. All right. So this was something new that came in, and then they give you, they have also extended in a sense that 72634 is a new table, right? In version 3816, you wouldn't have the 72634 table. This is a new table that inserted, that came in. And also you have this 7264. Okay, this one that says notwithstanding 726324, 72634, which is the table. Notwithstanding this table, again, they tell you due regard must be taken to ensure. That means you can put these together, but notwithstanding that, please make sure that the formation of obnoxious substances, asphyxiant gases, and all that conditions that they indicated are taken into account. And then 7265, this one is referring to segregation group. Sometimes you'll get a segregation group. Okay, they say because class 8 and class 8 is acids and alkalines, and these acids and alkalines should not be kept together. That's his principle rule number 1, because that's where the reaction starts. But it says here that notwithstanding that, it says notwithstanding the segregation groups, substances of class 8 in PG2 and 3 that would otherwise require to be kept away from each other or separated from each other can be transported in the same CTU. That means you can actually put these two acids and alkalines of PG2 and 3 that had to be separated from each other. You can pack them in the same CTU, provided that these conditions are adhered. So the first condition is that they don't form into that, evolve into that same thing, 7261 and all the way down. The second condition is that it does not, the substance in the inner package does not exceed 30 liters or 30 kgs. And that in the transport document, when you declare, because you are putting, can whoever has their mics on, just turn it off a bit because it's kind of noisy at the background. Yeah, only on the mic when you have to ask me a question or when I ask you a question, okay? Anyway, 72633, this talks about when you are allowed to put two different groups of chemicals of class 8 in PG2 and 3. You must then indicate this on your transport document. Here, when acids and alkaline substances of class 8 are transported in the same CTU, whether in the same packaging or not, in accordance to 7264, the following statement shall be included in the transport document, which means you say that it's transported in accordance to 7264, right? Which is this, 7264. And here, a copy of the test report that verifies that the substance does not react dangerously, because you can't just claim that they don't do this. Like I said, you have to substantiate that with some form of a test document, a test sheet, technical sheet that clearly indicates that the two class 8s of two different groups of chemicals can actually be kept together. All right, so when we move out of this, because there are other parts in this, like for instance, 727, 727 is very concerned with segregation on of class 1. And here they're talking about the stowage related segregation. That means from one package to the other package or one container to the other container. So that is 727 for you. But what you need to look at, what we are concerned with when we are loading and unloading CTUs, we are concerned with consigning operations and packing and the use of a CTU, because we are now relating this to the container. So when we come here, when I go to the introduction here, it says this chapter contains provisions appropriate to those responsible for the consignment operations of DG transport supply chain that relates to packing DG into the CTU. So that's generally what you guys are all doing, okay? And the general provisions for CTU, so here they define, when they defined what we're talking about in this portion of the code book, that means the code says when I come to 7.3 and when I refer to the CTU in 7.3, I'm referring to the CTU that is called a container. And how do I define a container? A container is that is applicable there, unless otherwise specified. The applicable provisions for the International Convention for Safe Containers 1972 as amended shall be followed for the use of any CTU which meets the definition of a container. So, which means now the code is telling you when I talk about CTU in this portion of the code book, I'm talking about a container. And when I talk about a container, I'm talking about what is defined as a container in the ICSC rules. Okay, so which means to say, I'm just going to run through the ICSC rules real quickly with you. All right, just so if any of you had forgotten it over time, you know, we can take a quick look at this. Okay, so this convention was published in 1972, and it only came into force, or it came about when containerization began to become popular. So the International Maritime Organization plus the European Economic Commission, they got together and they conducted a study. And the study that they conducted had two objectives. One was, how do we come up with standards where those companies who are building these containers, they follow specified specifications with regards to what is needed in terms of a strength of the container and in terms of its safety for usage. Then the second objective is, one was the structure. Okay, so they, just like the construction of packages, they came up with the construction requirements for containers, and also portable tanks here. Okay, and then after that, then they came up with how do we now maintain these things, because these units are multimodal, they're transmodal, you can move them on any mode of transport, and they have a tendency of being far away from the person who actually owns them because they go all around the world. So how do we ensure that these boxes are constantly maintained? So one of the first things they did was, after coming up with the construction requirements, a lot like your UN packing approval code, they then came up with a test that you conduct on the container before you can actually release the container for usage. So upon conducting the test, when the container passes the test, the container then obtains the ability to use this, which is the safety approval plate. So the safety approval plate is like the badge that indicates to us that the container was constructed based on the requirements of this international schedule. Because remember, the IMDG code says, when I talk about container, I'm talking about container as per this convention. So based on this convention, you need containers to be approved based on the conditions, the guidelines and provisions of this convention. And based on that, the container will obtain a badge called the safety approval badge. And the safety approval badge is important because it lists out a lot of information. All right. So one is tested before use. Upon passing the test before use, it obtains a safety approval plate. Then the other thing is, now, okay, people are using it. How are we going to ensure that these boxes are constantly maintained in terms of its seaworthiness? So what they did was they introduced an examination scheme called the periodic examination scheme. The periodic examination scheme is one of the first schemes that came up with the ICSE rules, where it indicated that the containers have to go for an interval inspection every 2.5 years and a full inspection every 5 years. In addition to that, so this is how the periodic examination scheme looks like, where this will indicate to you the month and year of expiration of the examination. So you will know when is the next inspection due for the unit. But also over time, what happened, a new program came in. And this new program is known as the Approved Continuous Examination Program, ASAP, because it's set on the premise that, you see, when PES came in, when PES came in, PES came in when containers just became popular. So it was still building up. ASAP came in very much later, and ASAP came in the point where containers were like ubiquitous. It was everywhere. So how do you then manage the, you can't like call up a container to a certain country when the inspection date is due. How do you ensure that you have a double maintenance program? What they came up was this. So this was on the premise that containers are usually stored at depots, that these container owners, whether it's the shipping lines or the box operators, they are the ones that would engage these depots to hold their containers at. So the ASAP's premise states that the safety examinations that take place for these containers, they take place during normal operations. So that means before the containers have been released to the shipper or the shipper's agent for usage, these containers should have gone through the inspections that are required under the ASAP rule. So these two, you would see ASAP on the badge of the container, which would indicate, when you see this ASAP engraved on the safety approval plate, you know that this is being done. Normal operating inspections include off-hire, on-hire inspection for leased units, and in-service inspections for shipping line operating containers. So unlike the PES, the ASAP does not have an expiration date because it goes on as and when, as and when, as and when, as and when, okay? And then also remember that a lot of stuff that started with the Commonwealth countries, because a lot of our laws are common UK laws, when the Americans started gaining themselves up, then, they always like to beg to differ. So they had their own rules. So this also works in tandem. Same reason with the global harmonized system. That was actually pushed in by the Americans. That's why Orange Book has to be harmonized with GHS. Yeah. The thing is they beg to differ, and yet we have to accept their thing. And there you go, the safety approval plate. So you see now these are parts of the training where I might have to edit. I might get into trouble. And in the container safety approval plate, like for tester, they will ask you simple stuff. What are the 4 important information you can gather from the CSE approval, safety approval plate? So you don't even have to think far. All you have to do is think what you need. Whenever you book a container with a shipping line, what's the first thing you need from the shipping lines? Because you want to tell the haulage guy to go and pick up the container from the assigned depot where the container is sitting, right? So what is the most important information you will convey to that haulage company? What's the first thing? Somebody answer me.
Wait.
No, yaar. Say I book 120-foot container to go to, say, Tanjung Priok port, and I called DC Logistics, your company, and I said, DC, can you please go and see this booking confirmation I made with the carrier? Please go and pick the container for me. All right. Now, when I give the booking confirmation to DC Logistics, in that booking confirmation, there's no information about the container other than stating that I booked 120-foot container. But then DC Logistics will call the shipping lines, and then you will get some information. One is, of course, where do I pick up the container, which depot? But what is the vital information you need to pull out the container you want?
Normally, they will give the container number.
Exactly. So that's why I say don't overthink. When you're overthinking, then you will think gross weight la, this la, that la. So try not to overthink this. Remember your job. Whenever you refer to a 20 or a 40-foot container, yeah, you will describe the size. But when you talk about it or refer to it, you will always use the container identification number. So that's the first information, right? Then the second thing, you want to know how old a container is. So you will want to know the date of manufacture of the container, right? The third thing you might want to know, because of SOLAS VGM, is the gross weight, the maximum gross weight. So you'll take the maximum gross weight as the third information. Then the fourth information can be anything other. You want to take stackable weight, or you want to take who is the owner of the container, or who is the manufacturer. So no bother about manufacturer. You want to know who the owner of the container is. All right, so this kind of information you can pick up from the safety approval plate. You don't have to memorize. You just have to think in your job, what is it that you look out for? So 7.3 is concerned with this type of a unit of a container. And now we're going to look at what 7.3 indicates to us. All right, so when we go there, I am going to open the code book and show you that directly. All right, so we covered this. Oh yeah, wait, one other thing here. The ICSE does not apply for offshore containers. So those stock tanks or those tiny containers that they use in the offshore, those are not part of ICSE. They are handled in open sea. The designs and testing for offshore containers shall take into account the dynamic lifting impact forces that may occur when a container is handled in open seas, in adverse weathers and sea conditions. The requirements for such containers are determined by shipping order, the MSC, Maritime Safety Guidelines, this one, the MSC circa. So this tells you the information, the guides on approved offshore containers that can be or that can be used for carrying dangerous goods to the open sea. And then after that, it talks about packing of cargo transport units. So here, what this is doing, I mean, you can see it in our slideshow. So it's pretty much the same stuff that we are covering here, right? Where we talk about, we move away from here. We go to 7.3. All right. I covered all this with you. So it starts with this: prior to the use of a CTU, it must be checked to see that it is apparently fit for its intended purpose.
We go back one slide.
Uh-huh.
Not one slide. I mean, you know, when we say we give the haulier the instruction to pick up the containers, right? You remember it says they do a periodic check of the containers. This goes down to these container deposit issues.
Wait, I'm going to pause the recording for a bit. Okay, so in 7.3.3, the definition is the container, and actually what 7.3 is attempting to do is it is attempting to run through the checklist on the CPC. Because if you look at it, the first 7.3.3.2 tells you that before you start packing dangerous goods in the container, you must make sure that the interior and exterior of the container has been inspected. So which means you have done an interior inspection to see if the container is fit to carry DG. Then the second thing, so it's the first thing, the container was clean, dry, and fit to receive goods. That's the first checkpoint on your CPC. So this is relating to that. The second one, they ask you to examine packages. So that means individually you examine a package to see whether the package is leaking or damaged, because you can't pack them in. So Nanmuli, the CPC surveyor who comes to do your thing, you know, he shouldn't just be sticking placards. He should be present when the container is being packed, because before you start packing the container, there are steps that you do before packing, while packing, and after packing. So before packing the container, you should have all these documents in your hand, and you have to prepare the PPE that is required when you handle this cargo, and you should have a loading plan. You should have a plan in place on how and what are you going to load, and the securing materials that are needed in hand to ensure that the cargo is secured properly and that whatever securing material is used is compatible with the goods. Right? So this is individual inspection of packages. So when you are packing, now whilst you're packing, before the cargo gets packed, you're doing an individual inspection of the package for damage. You're also doing an inspection to make sure that the packages are properly marked and labeled. But let's look at 7334. 7334 refers to drums. The drums are stored in an upright position. So then again, it's that point in the CPC checklist that telling you drums must be stored in an upright position unless otherwise authorized. And then 7335 is referring to if you are going to pack more than one DG into a CTU, then you have to determine whether this more than one DGs that are intended to be packed in are compatible with each other. And the only way you can do that is by looking at the segregation table and then focusing on 16B if it shows anything that you may have to pay attention to with regards to its compatibilities. And then here they talk about packages of dangerous goods and those that are unpackaged. So you have packages containing DG and unpackaged DG articles that you are packing into a container. So when you do that, you must make sure that all these unpackaged goods have been secured, nicely secured by using good restraining material within its weight that it can take. And the dangerous goods that have been packed with this unpackaged article must be also securely fixed into the container so that it does not escape during transit. Now, packages that are not intended to be stacked, you do not stack them. And you must make sure, because these are like simple guiding principles when you pack your container. You plan your packing to ensure that you unitize it in such a manner that you can optimize the space in the container. If you don't optimize the space in the container, there are little pockets of spaces. You must then use some form of a dunnage, or here we like to use the word choking, some kind of a dunnage or choking to make sure that those empty spaces, the goods, because you must take into account sometimes when the ship sways, she doesn't only sway 20, sometimes it's more than 45 degrees sway. So in a more than 45 degrees sway, can you imagine? The container is nicely here and you haven't secured it properly. When the ship sways, everything will fall. And then when it falls, then you're just asking for trouble because things do happen in sea. So you got to make sure you got nothing projecting out, that everything is evenly and optimally packed into the CTU. And then when you load and you unload packages that contain dangerous goods, you have to be careful. You cannot just be carelessly packing them in or using the fork truck, the forklift. If you're not trained to use a forklift, please don't drive a forklift because you might poke the fork in the wrong place that could damage the package and then you'll have a chemical spill. And then that's another thing that you have to go about handling, right? And remember, in a manufacturing unit, when you have a chemical spill, then you have to like report to DOSH, and there's like a lot that you would have to respond to that. And they talk about IBCs because IBCs, I'll be honest with you, when I run this training, sometimes I get people who get shocked when they look at the stacking symbol on the corrosion-free plate. They never knew that there are IBCs that are stackable and non-stackable. And the only way you know whether they're stackable or not is that symbol that shows on the corrosion-free plate. So if you are not trained to handle IBCs, get the training that is required and then go about using or handling IBCs, yeah? When you have dangerous goods packed with non-DG, that means you have a console box, a CFS operations, you have LCL cargo, and none of them are DG, and you've accepted a DG as well. So when you pack that container, you must make sure that the DG cargo is closer to the door, right, adjacent to the door, because if anything's spilling, it's easy to access, easily accessible. And one of the most important things is the locking devices of the containers. I have struggled many times to open the container. You have to literally sometimes climb on top of like a stool or something and then jump on the handle to open it, because sometimes the locking device gets jammed up. So you don't want to use a container with dangerous goods where you're going to struggle to open it, you know. So you got to make sure that these locking devices are all functionable in order to use those types of units to pack your dangerous goods into. Some class 4 dangerous goods may require some form of ventilation. So there could be some vent devices in that unit. So if there is a vent in the unit, then you must make sure that you do not block the vent. Otherwise, it doesn't do its job. And you have to check each and every package to make sure that each and every package has its marks and its labels. If the packages have been palletized, then you want to make sure that the overpack sign is there. And when you pack it into the container, then you have to make sure that the corresponding hazard symbols are indicated in placards on the container. Not forgetting that when you pack any UN number that is more than 4,000 kgs in weight, that those have to also have their UN numbers indicated along with the placards. In 73314, they talk about using the CTU code, referring to the CTU code. But what I want to do is I want to show you a little bit more of 7.3 from the code book itself. All right, because there are some other conditions indicated here. Okay, so we saw segregation provisions within the CTU. So packing of CTU we saw. Segregation principles within a CTU. So dangerous goods which have to be separated from each other according to 7.2, they cannot be transported in the same container. So again, it's reiterating. If you look at the segregation table, and segregation table tells you cannot. That means it's an 1, 2, 3, 4. You cannot pack it in. That means you cannot pack it into a CTU. However, an exception is made is if you have an away from, you may possibly be allowed to use or to pack it in the same CTU, but you can only do that with the condition of getting an approval from the competent authority to ensure that there has been some equivalent standards of safety. Like if it was Port Klang, LPK will never give that to you because anything 1 onwards, you cannot pack it in a container. That's the bottom line. All right. Then you have segregation in relation to foodstuffs. So there are certain dangerous goods that you cannot pack. So if you're running a CFS and some of the goods that you're packing together with DG happen to be foodstuffs, you got to be wary because there are some products, some classes of dangerous goods that you cannot pack with food items. So these are those that have primary or subsidiary hazards of 2.3, toxic gases, toxic substances, infectious substances, and radioactive substances, with the exception of these numbers that they gave you. All right, and class 8, corrosive substances. That these goods cannot be packed together in the same transport unit, is it? Having reference to 7342. That means in food stuff. Cannot be packed in the same CTU together. However, they can if you can maintain a 3-meter distance and that these products are under this condition. That means they are under PG3 for a 6.1 and an 8, or a PG2 for an 8, or any DG under PG2 that has a subsidiary hazard class of 6.18, and any DG having references of 73422, this one, packing group 2, in column 16B of the DGL. Right, so there are exceptions, but you still have to maintain the 3-meter distance. In my opinion, I would not put these DGs, even though I know because every space is money, right? But
Yeah.
there are certain conditions that you need to take
Reshma, I
into
just want
account.
to ask.
735 is about tracking and monitoring. So here, sometimes for security purposes, or even now we are tracking and more using telematics and all this stuff to track and trace, right? So whatever devices that are used in the container for tracking and tracing, we must make sure that they are certified safe and that they are compatible with the DGs that we have packed into the CTU. This 736 actually is referring to when you open or unload the CTU. So when you're importing the DG in and then you have to open and unload, they tell you that you should do it in caution, and before opening the doors, the nature of the contents must be determined, because if there is a possibility of leakage, it can cause an unsafe condition, especially if there are concentrations of toxic or flammable or corrosive substances, or even oxygen depleting substances. After a CTU carrying DG has been unpacked or unloaded, then this is like general house rules, housekeeping rules. Remove everything, keep the thing clean, make sure there's no contamination, make sure that the substance has not leaked and started corroding anything. Because remember, Prunella just mentioned that, right? That if you send a container that is unchecked, chances are that you would end up having to pay a large amount for it to the shipping lines. So another way where we can also protect, I think with a lot of people who are already doing this when it comes to the shipping lines per se, and this container deposit issue, is taking evidence, photographic evidence. So hoping that when whoever picks up the container and receives the container, upon receipt of the container, you have photographic evidence to show how the container looks like externally and internally. Once you have packed your cargoes inside, how does it look like externally and internally? And once you have unpacked, that means upon receival, when you receive it laden, how does it look? When you open it, how does it look? When you unload it, how does it look? Exterior and interior. Just so this photographic evidence can be used when massive claims have been made by the carrier. And then you have CTU that are under temperature control. So these are our organic peroxides and polymerizing substances. Now these ones, they if they exceed, they say that if the temperature of certain substances such as peroxides and polymerizing substances or self-reactive substances exceeds a value which is typical of the substance as packaged for transport, a self-accelerating decomposition or polymerizing possibility of explosive violence may result. To prevent such decomposition or polymerization, it is necessary to control the temperature of substances during transit. Now, other substances not recurring to this is not subject to this, you know, other than for the for like say you're using a cooling substance for transport, that is not the condition here. That doesn't form part of the condition here. This is the product itself is self-accelerating or polymerizing. The provisions for temperature control of certain specified substances are based on the assumption that the temperature in the immediate surrounding of the cargo does not exceed 55 degrees Celsius during transport and attains this value for a relatively short time during which each period of 24 hours. So in the period of 24 hours, this is the maintenance. That means to say it is stable, it's stable at 55 degrees over a period of 24 hours. Where a number of packages containing self-reactive substances, organic peroxides, and polymerizing substances are loaded into a closed container, the total quantity of the substance, the type and number of packages, and the stacking arrangement must not create an explosive hazard. That the provisions apply to certain self-reactive substances when required. You have to go to 2.4.3.4 for certain organic peroxides, okay, where they are talking about what does it mean by self-reactive substances. And certain organic peroxides, this is referring to 5.2, and certain polymerizing substances, this is your 4.1, or special provision 386 for chapter 3.3, whichever may only be transported under conditions where the temperature is controlled. So here they talk about, say, for instance, the provisions also apply for transport of substances for which the PSN is indicated in column number 2 of the DGL of this chapter that contains the word stabilized. And self-accelerating decomposition temperatures or self-accelerating polymerizing temperatures determined for substances with or without chemical stabilizers as a food for transport, which is at 50 degrees when it's packed into an IBC or 45 degrees for portable tanks. When chemical inhibition is not used to stabilize a reactive substance, which may generate dangerous amounts of heat of gas or vapor under normal transport conditions, these substances need to be transported under temperature control. Now, these provisions do not apply for substances which are stabilized. So if they've been stabilized, you don't need to use temperature control transport, elevated temperature transport. But if they have not been stabilized, then you have to follow. That means, what do they mean by that? They've given you the prescribed amount here, the temperature amount. So if they exceed these and this, then they have to go under temperature controlled, they have to be under temperature, CTUs under temperature control to keep them cool at all times. So, sorry. So this talks to you about the temperature control. That means that is the temperature that needs to be maintained in the unit. And because this cargo heats up on time, the temperatures will increase because it's a closed CTU, right? So when the temperature increases, at what temperature level should you call it an emergency temperature level? That means that is the time you have to go back to the controls and either you know how to readjust it. Usually you get these control engineers to come and do this. So they've given you that when it's in a single packaging or IBCs, if it goes below 10 degrees Celsius or 5 degrees Celsius, depending on its SADT, SAPT. And for a portable tank, below 5 Celsius. All right, so this is all about temperature control, methods for temperature control, and there are some engineering stuff in here. You can read that on your own. All right, and finally, I think we have to do some exercises, because after this here, 738, this is not concerning you because this is about loading and unloading CTU on board ships, which is your terminals that are doing it. So this would be relevant to them. All right. So now what we can look at now, or what I would recommend that we look at now, are some exercises. I will do the CTU code tomorrow. Okay, so we finished all of this. And I want you to work on these exercises. Okay, one of which is you have 10 drums of ethylene diamine of UN 1604, which is a class 8 and a class 3. And you want to stuff that with 5 pellets of cerium of 133 of class 4.1. So the question wants to know, can you pack both these dangerous goods together? And if your answer is yes or no, give your reasons why. So can we try doing this workshop? I am pretty sure you have these UN numbers in your notes. Just check and see. It should be a 1604 and a 1333. Did I see 1604? Or maybe I will open it up for you, okay? So let me open this up so you don't have to go so far. So it's 1333 and 1604, and we want to identify whether both these consignments can be kept together or not. So first I will open up 160. What was the number? 1604. So first I will open up 1604. Okay, ethyl. So you probably have your rough paper. I want you to list down the columns that I indicated. How do we go about doing this? Hang on, I want to go get my paper and pen. All right, so column 3, you see class 8. Column 4, you see class 3. Yo, I've run out of paper. Amen. And then 16B tells you SGG 18 and SG 35. And you want to know whether you can keep it with a 1333. So I hope you took the 1604 information, because I'm now going to 1333. And in 1333, I noticed that I have a 4.1 and there is no subsidiary hazard. So when I look at this, can I pack these two together? Let's see, one of you answer.
We can pack, but it's actually away from 3 meters each other.
Is it away from 3 meters?
This is pretty simple, yeah. You should be able to give me the answer relatively quick.
Actually, X.
8 and 4.1, what do you get?
1.
1. 4.1 and 8 is 1.
My friends, turn on your mics, please. You're taking too long. And I find it really odd why you should be taking so long in this. Because the question is asking you, can you pack this in the container, right? And then
If
you
you
take
return
8 and 4.1 and what do you get?
8 and 4.1, it's 1.
In
3
the
meter
segregation
away.
bill, what is it you get?
3 meter.
You can, but it has an away of 3 meters.
Meter.
Hello, what is happening? Why isn't anyone answering me a very simple question?
No,
Ishma, can you
that's
hear
what
8
we've
and
been telling you.
4.1, what do you get?
Yeah,
1.
we just told you.
1
1 meter away. You can't hear.
meter away.
I think she still can't hear us.
Oh, really?
Ishma, can you hear me?
Okay, maybe you got to turn your mic on and then maybe I'll be able to hear you.
We already turn mic on.
Already
Everybody turn mic on already.
I cannot hear you. None of you.
Hello, hello. Testing, testing.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Can each other we can hear.
Yeah, we can hear each other.
We can hear.
Can
I
hear each
cannot
other,
hear
Sister
any of
Resma.
you. Hang on, huh? Okay, now you come and speak to me.
No.
Okay.
Ishma,
Ishma?
Hi.
What?
can you hear us now?
Yes.
Ishma?
Hello.
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 You still cannot hear us, oh.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
my internet. Wait, I opened my door. The line is not stable, I think. Hold on. Okay. Try again. Let me hear your voices.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Reshma.
Ayyo.
Yeah.
Okay, use the chat box and answer. I cannot hear anyone for some reason. So use the chat box. How, Mala, how can you say can pack together, Mala? Huh?
Based on
Because the question is, can you pack together or not? The question says, can you pack together? No, you cannot. Why? Because you get a value 1, which is away from. Remember I said, away from cannot put in the same CTU unless you got competent authority approval. Don't tell me every time you're going to run to the competent authority to go and get the approval. And trust me, the competent authority will not give you the approval unless you can provide some scientific evidence to say that you can put that together, and or that you can show them some clear description of the safety steps that you have taken so that you maintain this 3-meter distance in a CTU. Right? So your answer should be no. And then why no? Can this be packed together? No, it cannot be kept packed together. Why? Because UN 1604 of class 8 and UN 1333 of class 4.1 needs to be separated 3 meters away from each other. That is your answer.
Okay.
All right. Look at the second question. In the second question, it is now a UN 1596 and a UN 1160. So let me know, can this be packed together or not?
96110.
1 and 3.
1596,
6,
1160.
6.1, 3, 6.1, 3. Yes.
1, 1, 3. Can number 18 can.
1596, 6.1. No has class. SG15. 1160 now. It's a 3 and an 8. And there is a SGG18 and a SG35. So let's see you guys answer. Can we pack this together in the same container?
Yes.
No.
Whether yes or no, indicate why. So if I cannot hear you, I'm going to open the chat box now to see your answer. Jane, you say can pack together.
6.3.
Mala also says can pack together. You see SG15. What is SG15? Separated from class 3. So my friends, how did you not get this? Why are you making this mistake? Not looking at column 16B. You make this mistake, you will make, it's not even, I can laugh now. Now we can
Why?
laugh because we're doing exercise, but in reality, it's not a laughing situation, right? You're going to cause some massive havoc there. Because you see, when you look at SG15 for 1596 and you turn to SG15, SG15 says store separated from class 3. That means there's a 6-meter distance you have to keep 1596 from a class 3. And 1160 is a class 3 one. So you cannot pack together. See, Michael, you also. Ayo, Amma, I'm going to give you all a lot of segregation questions lah. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of segregation questions.
Class 3. Class 3.
Yes, please. All right. I'm attaching one thing here in your chat box. Okay. This thing that I am attaching for you is the consignment procedure question that for some reason I don't see it in the exam, right? In the exam button. So I put the question here for you, okay, to answer. And similarly, what I'm going to do is in your attachments in your portal, you got so many UN numbers like that. I'm just going to randomly select some UN numbers and I'm going to put it up for you all. I'll create these questions in a short while and I'll put it up for you to answer it. Okay. So you practice some more. So here in this one already, we are not finished because first we saw SG15 and that's the highest though. There's a 6 meter distance between them. SGG18 was telling you to refer to the alkaline table. If you looked at it and assuming if 1596 was an alkaline, the SGG18 is only saying 3 meters. So actually 6 meters is higher than 3 meters. We have to take the highest, right? And if we look at SG35, SG35 is separated from SGG1. All right, so it's another 6 meter distance. So which means to say when we answer a segregation question, we've got to look at what is the most biggest distance. And that is our answer. That means that what is the most stringent distance? All right. So in this case with 1596 and 1660, the relevant answer, can both these be packed together? No, because UN 1596 needs to be according to SG15. UN 1596 has to be separated 6 meters away from a class 3, which is UN 1160. Okay, that's how you answer this. Let's see another one since we have time. Okay, this is actually the CTU code. So I will cover this question tomorrow before and after. All right. And this one, I think you can answer this. Or we can cover it again in CTU code because this is CTU code. This one, list 3 information that a CSC plate should have. 3 information that you see in a safety approval plate. So what is number 1?
Container number.
Yes,
Year of manufacture.
identification number. Number 2.
Year of manufacture.
Age of the container.
Yes, the year of manufacture. And then number 3, I would take the gross weight instead of name of manufacturer, because what's important for us when we are in this transport chain is the number, the year of manufacture, and the gross weight of the container, because we are in this line, so these are what is relevant to us at every one time. And then the other one, the safety data sheet. The question tells you the question tells you to indicate which section of the SDS you can find information on transport and list 4 information that can be found in that section. Section 14, okay, and 4 information, UN PSN, hazard class, and packing group, the 4 information. Now I want to talk to you about what I sent you just now, okay, which is it's actually here, which I don't know why y'all can't see it in the exam. I've got to check it out. Why? Something I must have done wrong again or what? But this was the question I gave you to work on. They ask you to use the SDS for RICA. And RICA's SDS is attached. You look at, let me open another screen for you. Say you look at, go to my courses. It's called activity attachments in your course notes. The subject. See this one? So this one will have the SDS that you want, the DGL packing instructions to answer this question. Okay. So they say the first question is the shipper wants to pack these goods in limited quantity. Indicate if it can be done and state the conditions for LQ if it's applicable. So which means you have to go to this SDS, find out what's the UN number, then go to the DGL and find out whether can use LQ or not. If can, then you indicate the conditions for it. Number two, the shipper also wants to use 1A1 drums, indicate the maximum capacity. So again, you need to know the relevant column of the DGL to look at to identify whether this 1A1 drums can be used and how much can be filled in them depending on the packing group of this product. Yeah. Number three, the shipper has sent the drums for performance test and provided the testing company with the following details. So your question for this number three is actually you have to write down the UN packing approval code, and they gave you this information. A, the material is steel and the drum is a non-removable head type. B, it was tested for their cargo, which has a relative density of 1.5 and the pressure required is 160 kPa. And the drum was manufactured in Malaysia in 2019. And the shipper received a report and certificate numbered MY009/2019. So you have to then, this question is asking you to take all this information and create the UN packing approval code. That's the question number three. Question number four, indicate how these drums have to be marked and labeled. Right, because he wanted to use drums, right? And I think he can use drums because they're asking you how to mark and label them. The shipper intends to pack 50 of these drums in a 20-foot container, indicate how it should be declared. So this question is now asking you all that part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6. All these parts of this one question here. All right, so prepare this question and email it to me. For those who have already emailed me some of your earlier ones, I will be responding to those back to you. All right, and I will be creating the case study and putting it on by this evening. So tomorrow we will discuss, first we'll do CTU code, then we'll discuss how are we going to answer this case study without actually giving answers. Because this case study, like I told you, will carry 25 marks from your entire exam, and your exam's on Monday. So on Monday, the exams will be, I think you have the timetable. I believe it's 10 o'clock or something like that, 10 or 11 o'clock. So before that, when you come early in the morning at 9 o'clock, in fact, you know what I will do is I will create the trial exam paper for you to try out on your own. Okay, so during the weekends, you can do your case study, you can try out with this trial exams, or you can choose to do it on Monday morning, up to you also. Okay, so we'll take that up. So tomorrow is CTU code, and tomorrow is discussing how to answer case study, right? All right. The thing is that I can't hear you. I'm going to put another earphone and see if I can hear you from there. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Can you all hear me? Logitech. Okay. You should be able to hear me now. Possible, ka?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
And I also can hear you all. Wow, I think my battery died just now. That's
We were
why.
hearing you. Everyone was hearing you.
But I think my battery, because it is a Bluetooth punya device, kan? So I think the battery died. That's why y'all could hear me, but I couldn't hear y'all. Okay, now that I can hear you, thank God for that. Do you all have any questions or not today? Because today we covered fairly large amount. Yeah, so maybe you want to answer that consignment procedure questions. And like I said, I will put in a few other questions on segregation where you can actually get the UN numbers, the DGL information all in your attachments. And then keep testing yourself, because Tomorrow when we do CTU code, after that we discuss case study, and then we go back because tomorrow actually I want to keep testing you guys on segregation on and on and on and on. Okay, to make sure that you know. Of course, then because CTU code will talk about what are the conditions before you start packing the CTU, what are the conditions while you are packing the CTU, and what are the conditions after you have packed the CTU. Also, the CTU code will talk about the exterior, interior inspection of the container. And then it gives you a lot more, because the CTU code is not necessarily for DG cargo. There's a section that covers DG cargo, but it covers any other cargo. It's about safely securing CTUs, packing and securing CTUs. So we'll cover a little bit because it talks about responsibilities, although we all know that the highest load of responsibility with DG resides in the shipper. The shipper has tons of responsibility to make sure that everything, packages are in compliance, the marking, labeling, the documentation, and actually it's the responsibility of the shipper to find out that whoever they engage with, the service provider, that these people are trained and certified. So you cannot, like, tomorrow one day something happens and it turns, oh, I don't know that my freight forwarder or my logistics service provider does not have the relevant certification and training. You can't turn around and say that, right? So it becomes necessary that you select companies, for manufacturers, select companies that know, that have the certification, that have been doing it for a while. Don't just go for cost. I know cost is a big issue, but this is going to be penny wise, pound foolish if you're going to look at cost in isolation when it comes to DG.
I think what happens today is that you have contractor, you have the main logistics agent, then you have the subcontractors, and you have the subcontractors. I think the worst issue that happens is that even the shipper themselves, most of them can't be bothered how they actually pack it. They are just in a hurry to just get out of the site. And they say, okay, ship it, my thing all correct. And then they lock the container. This is more where the shipper themselves does the shipping, and he just throws everything inside the container because he wants to get out of the place.
Reshma, we can't hear you.
Sorry, what?
We can't hear you. Just now you were saying something. Now only I can hear you.
Okay, I said I understood the gist of what Prunella was trying to say, because I lost her for a little while just now. But I understand the gist. The gist is that when you have multiple subcontractors involved, all right, the multiple 101 subcontractors, as you go down the line, that's where the compliance level will go down the drain. So it is ensuring that when it comes to a service provider, also whoever you subcontract with, then it becomes your duty to make sure that that person has been properly trained, or that they're under your supervision. That means you have to be there at all times to make sure that things are done in accordance, because especially if you're going to be the party that signs the CPC for them. All right, any other questions before I end today's session?
Reshma, I want to ask about the test, okay? Because since most of us don't have DGL, so during the test, would it be like given the DGL portion?
Yeah, so again, I keep telling you guys, all those UN numbers and everything that has been in your attachments, please download. And if you are the type of person like me, I'm pretty old school. For me, download and digital copy is not enough. I still need to print the damn thing and hold in my hand. Okay? So if you're like me and you need it, please print and keep in your hand, because then it's easy for you to refer to, because the exams will be referring to these things. Okay?
Okay, understand.
Yeah, so just keep them, because there will barely be any questions on packing instruction. If the question for packing instructions will come also, it'll come like the multiple choice kind of questions. That P001 is an instruction for what? P002 is an instruction for what? What is the maximum capacity? What is the maximum gross weight allowed? Those kind of things, you know? It won't go like the way I'm testing you guys. But When it comes to a case study, yeah, the case study will make you go to forward to the P001s and to look at every aspect in the case study, right? Because generally that's what is required out of you. You must be,
Yeah.
when they say you are adept, your adept means what? That means a case is, and because our job is a case, right? Every time it's a case. When somebody comes with a consignment, it becomes a case for us. So how do we address the case? So with these case studies, what you do, you're actually going through all over the book to find your answers so that you ensure that you comply with what the code requires.
Reshma, I just want to confirm. So we just print those who actually under the case study and attachment folder, is it? Or
No, no.
across?
Why don't you just take whatever is there? Because there are some that are repeated. So you don't have to redo that, right? There are some UN numbers that are there in separate parts that are pretty much the same UN numbers. So pick those numbers off. Like say, for instance, if I was you, I'm sharing my screen now with you, right? If I was you, let me tell you what I would do. As soon as, okay, introduction will have nothing. Classification, you see these UN numbers? Now I would actually download and print these things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, then I'll go here. See so many? But if there is a same UN number, I won't download those, of course. But the other ones, I will keep them. Just print them and keep them. Special provisions, tank instructions. Yeah, because the questions can come from anywhere. So the attachments, as long as they are within your attachments here, they will come for this from all these attachments that are here. Right? And you see how many UN numbers there are here itself. Because when you're doing your exam, you can actually see this, like how I showed you. You open this and then you open your exam paper at the same time. But like I said, if you're me kind of a person, you want to have the physical copy, please print and keep the physical copy so you don't freak out during the exam, especially when the internet lags. Because when you open so many tabs, the internet will start lagging then.
Sorry, madam. But I need help to locate the safety data sheet for the consignment procedure exam.
It's here. See, what you do is you go to this activity 12, subject 12. You click that. There, this is the SDS for that.
Well,
you are looking at the SDS for the consignment procedure, right? So you open that. There.
Consignment procedure open.
Yeah. You will get the RICA SDS. There you see? Can you see my screen?
What is it? Because from my screen here, I'm only able to see, of course, consignment procedure, UN numbers.
Where are you looking at?
I'm looking at the subject, part 5, right, consignment procedures.
Okay. Now, what is your question actually?
Jan, you go to part 12.
Yeah, if you are looking, because when I said consignment procedures in that chat box, that is the test question. That means that's an activity question. So to answer that activity question, you have to go to my courses, go to your course, go to subject number 12.
Activity attachments.
That one. And then there you'll see the first one says SDS. You click open that and that's your SDS right there.
Subject 12. Okay, got it. Thank you, Brilliant.
You're welcome. So in fact, for that consignment procedure question, all of the attachments are there for that question. The DGL also is in reference to this SDS. The packing instruction also is in reference to this SDS. And of course, the UN packing approval code, because you have to create the code as part of that question. So it's there for you to refer to in terms of what do I have to put. You know, is it a 6A or a 1A or whatever? Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Ready to go? Ready to go. All right. Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to